Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 65 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers and follow us on social media / The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by mybookie.ag for a 50% sign-up bonus. No, make that a 200% sign-up bonus. Please visit MyBookie and use the promo code ODDS200. Terms and conditions and location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the podcast and the website, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Well, my friends, I got to tell you, it's been a slow and quiet week in the news, hasn't it?
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Not like we had this polarizing election or anything. I don't know if doesn't really feel like anything's getting better no matter who wins. Unfortunately, looks like there's a ton of wagers bet on the election. They say it was the most bet on thing in all of history, more than Super Bowls. So I found that really interesting. But as sports betting actually grows, that's what's going to happen. It's going to continue to break records. You know, next Super Bowl might break that record itself. 3 states became legalized from this past election. We have Virginia, and they are now authorized and allowed to have casinos. You have Louisiana that just passed it, and South Dakota, which will be limiting it to tribal areas, will also be having sports betting. So congratulations on those states for passing that bill. As far as the states that haven't even made a movement yet, there are 15 of those states awaiting the opportunity to capitalize on additional tax revenue. The irony is that some of these states instead passed the legalization of marijuana and left sports betting completely off the ballot.
I'm so high right now.
If you are a podcast listener and you live in any of those states, please tweet or contact your local lawmakers and legislators. They are receptive. I've done a few myself in a few states. They will hopefully answer that, and maybe you can help them push the envelope a little bit, because most of these states definitely need additional tax revenue rather than keep raising the percentage for people that work. Now, as far as the election itself, obviously it turned out to be a complete shit show, like many of us predicted. And no matter who wins at the end, it still keeps the country massively polarized. We are not a political show. We're not going to give any sides, our thoughts on who should win and who shouldn't. But all I have to say here is something I said in a previous podcast. If you actually had more candidates on the ballot, like 6 of them, and ranked them 1 through 6 on each ballot, not only will a better, more middle-of-the-road person win than the polarizing opposites, but the media will be forced to become more honest so they don't have to try to swing a side, and people will be much less polarized against each other in this country every single election season. All right, well, we have a great show for you today, my friends, because Brian Bonito is back from Raise Your Roll to talk about some college and NFL games coming up. Very excited about that. Brian's a great guy. Can't wait to hear some of his thoughts. Some of the distractions that are going on in college and in the NFL is the COVID situation. It's gone up a bit. Fall is actually considered a big time of year for raising coronaviruses in general. So you can kind of see some of that. Some of the places that didn't get hit as hard as other places are getting it much worse, like the Midwest and Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, while Arizona is a slight uptick. Las Vegas is a little bit more of an uptick. California is kind of hovering. They had kind of a hot time too. New York already had their hot time, so it's not spreading as fast. But as far as some of the states that didn't get it bad, they are now getting it worse than other places. But in general, the country is going up because of the months here in fall, and it's going to affect some football games. Should it make you scared to not place the bet? No, because maybe that side's going to be right, and maybe the game will go on. The worst that can happen is that they can give you your money back. As you know, we've already placed bets, had some great line value, and have the bet pulled from us because the game has been canceled. So just know that's going to happen, but it shouldn't stop you, especially if you use apps to place those bets in the first place. Before we get Brian on, I'm going to start out with a little NCAA, a free play for you that I'm not going to be covering with Brian. And we're going to start right out with a big fat total for you. We're going to go to LA Tech versus North Texas. North Texas is -1.5, but the total on this is 71.5. Now, North Texas games, if you look at the average score, they are 83 points per game because North Texas plays lightning fast. They average 81 plays per game, actually 81.5 plays per game, and 19.0 seconds per play. That is the fastest in speed of offense between plays. They don't even really huddle up, ever. The Mean Green also gives up 7 yards per play, making them lose really fast if they're not necessarily scoring all the time. Now, LA Tech plays at the average pace, but they're at least putting up 30 points per game against teams with better defenses in general than North Texas. Just last week, they faced UAB, and they put up 37 points winning the game and gave up 34. To UTSA, which is a pretty terrible team, doesn't play extremely fast. They gave up 27 points. To Marshall, they gave up 35. Marshall's pretty good. UTEP was a slow game, only 17. BYU put 45 on them, et cetera, et cetera. Even Southern Miss put up 30 on them. So I expect a high scoring game, as you can see here, and I'm sure you're starting to know where I'm going with this. This number's too low at 71.5. I got it at about 76.5. Okay. The low spread here also tells you that there might not be, a running out the clock at the end of the game. It looks like a shootout type game going all the way to the end, where you sometimes see 80, 90, 100 points between opponents like these two right here. So I like the over. I think there's a much greater chance that it goes over 71.5 than it goes under. The weather's cooperating right here. Over 71.5 will make that 2-star premium shared play.
I'm still on the other line. I'm gonna hear you say it.
Yeah, no. Show you the money.
That's not show you. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
Yeah. Louder.
Show me the money.
That's it, brother. But you got to yell that shit.
Show me the money.
I need to feel you, Jerry.
Show me the money.
Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
All right, my friends, now it's time to get into our guest, Mr. Brian Bonito from RaiseYourRoll.com. And now I'm very pleased to welcome back a very knowledgeable and experienced handicapper to our show in Mr. Brian Bonito from RaiseYourRoll.com. You can follow him on Twitter at @my_bankroll. Brian, it's been a while since our last podcast. I actually had it down at February 13th, and I think since then the whole world went crazy, man. So what's been new with you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I had thoughts of just leaving the business completely because the world was chaotic and sports shut down. I came back to Vegas. I was in Colorado at that time, as you know, moved back here and was kind of, caught in limbo when the whole thing went down. So was just checking my desire for it. And then it came back on. And when you start looking at games and numbers again, and the field came back, and I was like, oh, no, I got to definitely, I'm back in. So just kind of getting back into it and trying to build the following back. Some of the guys disappeared. Some of the guys still aren't around. And just kind of feeling my way around. We got a new podcast, myself and another partner, trying to build like you've got going, your listener. The Legit Betting Edge podcasts. We're on episode 9 coming today. So just kind of build that up, build some social media up. And, I will be doing some promotion down the road, but not right this second for this particular cause. But nonetheless, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad to be here.
Oh, fantastic, man. You guys check that out. Brian does a great job, and he also has some great videos on his Twitter timeline as well. So every week, and if not daily, you get some information from Brian. Great stuff there, man. Well, we have a full slate of games to get into, Brian. And we're going to start right out with the NCAA, my man. Little college football going on. Here's an interesting game here. Michigan is going to Indiana. Indiana's 2-0. They got a lot of hype in the offseason. Indiana is a 3-point dog here. The total on this thing is at 53.5. Have you got a chance to look at this one?
I did. I looked at it. I'll be honest. Michigan fooled me last week. I thought they were going to play strong this year. They come out week number 1. Massive destruction, and then they drop a game to Michigan State, which was supposed to be one of the worst teams in their conference. So here's what I think, though. I think Michigan gets a little bounce back here. I think Harbaugh gets a little bounce back. It's a 3-point. It opened at 2.5. It's climbed to 3. I think it's going to stay steady at 3. But I'm looking for Michigan to bounce back and cover this. I see Michigan with maybe a 4 or 5 point win on this. And, I'm looking at what do you have the total at right now again, Kiev?
I got 53.5 right now. It's been bouncing a little bit around there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tight. I would lean under on this, but I definitely would side with Michigan if I was going to play. Now, I haven't made a bet on this yet, but I am seeing Michigan cover the 3.
All right. Well, there you go. And I agree with you. There's some trickery that happens. You didn't know that Minnesota's defense was that bad until Maryland destroys them, right? And then you're like, oh,
sure.
Geez. And then Michigan's in a spot where they're probably taking Michigan State a little too lightly, and Michigan State plays a little bit out of their mind. I think Michigan's better than what we saw as well. As far as the power rating, I was high on Indiana, and I had to downgrade Michigan a bit, bring this game closer to a pick'em. But what worries me is Michigan's desperate right now. They're embarrassed. Sure. They're embarrassed. The Wolverines didn't age well with that beating to Minnesota. And Indiana, much improved. But the look-ahead line was more like 6 or more, and, people had Michigan at least where Penn State was before they came in. I didn't, but either way, now with the huge difference, it's probably Michigan or nothing. Michigan has the better athletes, but they're very young, so I knew they'd start out struggling a little bit. But Indiana, their wins, they didn't really deserve to cover the spread last week against Rutgers. Rutgers kind of beat themselves with some turnovers, and they got massively outgained against Penn State, So here's what's going to happen. I think you might going to see Indiana become a public dog here. There's a lot of Michigan haters out there. So if anybody's interested in the Michigan side, you might get a shot at 2.5. So I kind of agree with what you're saying there, but I didn't make a play either, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, Rutgers, I'm glad Schiano's back with Rutgers, to be honest. So I think that's a great thing for Rutgers, and they did blow themselves up at the end of that game to not get the cover against Indiana.
Oh, they sure as heck didn't they? Oh my God! And then that last play with the review, that I'm not gonna lie, I had Rutgers plus 12 or something like that, and that last thing affected me too. There's a lot of that last week for some reason. I finally had a bad college week, but we're gonna turn it around here, and I think I have an angle on this game, and I'm going to see what your thoughts are after I quick go through it. Washington versus Cal. Cal is a 2-point favorite now. The total on this game is low, 43.5. Now, this one is a little bit simpler to me because I look at the history of this game under Justin Wilcox when he's been there the last 2.5, 3 years now. Cal upset Washington both times, and Cal was a bad team then, and under Chris Peterson, Washington was a very good team, one of the top in the Pac-12. Well, that just says that Cal seems to have their number with that coach. Now, Washington has a new coach, and it's the same system, and Jimmy Lake, right? So a little familiarity there with Cal. And he was the defensive coordinator there for a while. They brought in a new offensive coordinator in John Donovan that came from the NFL, from the Jacksonville Jaguars, for God's sakes. I'm not sure how well that's going to go, but what more importantly is Washington only ranks 127th, third worst in returning production on offense, only returning 30% of their offense, and they at least return 7 starters on defense, but Cal ranks number 1 in returning production in the country on offense. They return pretty much everybody, including their quarterback, Chase Garbers. They also return a few starters on defense. I've seen different numbers, 5 to 7, and they should be a little bit weaker on defense. They lost their top 3 tacklers. That's important. But is that going to matter when they're at home against an offense like Washington that is brand new? And number 2, Justin Wilcox is a defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator at Wisconsin when they had the top 2 defenses in the league 3-4 years ago during the TJ Watt era. I'm not so worried about Cal's defense. Washington's new quarterback, Jacob Simon, has 0 experience throwing, only 3 passes last year. I actually gave this out to some members at plus 1.5, but it's switched to -2, and I still like it. I still like it to at least 3. I'm taking the Bears, -2, 2-star premium shared play. You have any thoughts on this one?
Well, I'll tell you what, you just added a whole lot of things that I didn't know, which I certainly appreciate. On a game like this where these two teams haven't played it down, I find it very difficult to make a play. So what I did is I just go back to last year and I do research just like you just did. And I do lean Cal, and this total is so low that I would have to lean under if I was really going to make a move on it. But because I haven't seen anything done in the Pac-12, this is their first week. They're all playing. Same with the MAC. I really can't make a move on it. But I do lean Cal as I looked at it. The numbers did lean Cal, and the line is moving. The line's moving up, and it may. What are your thoughts about game time? Where do you think it's going to be?
I think it'll be a 3. I think it'll be a fat 3 at game time. I think, and that's where I would get a little bit scared. When you have such a low total, anything over 3 makes you bite your nails a little bit. It just shows you that the game's going to be close, and it shows you that the last score is going to win. So that's where I get a little bit, timid. I would possibly buy back over 3. I wouldn't buy back at the 3, I don't think, because I still like Cal that much. But the buyback one might only be a 50%. But glad we agree on that one.
Yeah.
Let's move to a huge primetime game here. Georgia versus Florida. Florida's laying 3.5 here. The total on this one is 52.5. I cannot wait to watch this game. This is kind of one of the SEC ones I've circled since the summer. Brian, I'll let you start on this one and tell us your thoughts.
Sure. Well, you got Georgia coming off a tougher game than they expected, I think, against Kentucky. Kentucky acquitted themselves pretty well after playing poorly a couple of weeks in a row, but they did beat Tennessee with with 3 interceptions. But they come home and they really held Georgia in check. I did play Kentucky plus the 17 points last week. Georgia goes home now, and they opened it. I think it was 5 they opened at, maybe 5.5. I know that it's down to 3.5. Florida beat my play of the day last week. I had Missouri plus the points. And so I just think Florida probably is the better team in this matchup. Now, did they hit the road and are they able to go in and possibly get the W? I think it's possible they get the W straight up. I lean Florida plus the points in this. The line is coming down. It is moving against Georgia. And, if I make a play on it, which I probably won't, it's not one of my favorite plays. It's an interesting matchup just to see who in the SEC is going to step up and maybe challenge Alabama down the road.
No, it's a great matchup. I agree. And I think I'm kind of with you here. It's the biggest cocktail party in the world, they call it, and neutral site in Jacksonville at TII Bank Stadium there. They play it every year. It's a fun game for Georgia versus Florida. Both fans' bases will be there with bells on. Taking a deep dive. I mean, let's just look at Georgia's defense. They have the better defense. They only allow 16.2 points per game. I guess if you threw out Alabama, it'd be much lower. And they allow 4.5 yards per play. But Florida's defense improved last week a little bit, and they still allow 29 points per game at 5.82 yards per play. But the Georgia offense is bad. It's very bad, especially since Bama kind of put them in check, Their defense kind of set the offense up to score the first 3 games or so. And Auburn just looked terrible against Georgia. But then all of a sudden they go to Kentucky and they only score 14 points. Georgia averages 29 points per game and 5.5 yards per play. That's so low. But Florida, this is the difference here. They torched Missouri last week, and they averaged 7.5 yards per play on offense, almost like the LSU standards of last year, which gives them a net 1.68 yards per play to Georgia's net 1 yard per play. That's advantage Florida there, and it's kind of an offensive game now, So Georgia, they have the more difficult schedule. I think they face Bama and Auburn and Kentucky, but Florida kept it close with A&M, and that was a tough spot for them having to play at A&M. Now they're playing a lot closer to the Swamp in this game. It's a tight spread, so I expect a tight game. And one thing I do like about the Gators is that they did well against the run this year. They only allow 3.75 yards per run, which is Georgia's way of dominating games. I don't like Georgia's quarterback at all. I think Stetson Bennett. If Florida's smart, they stack the box and force him to make the plays, right? Stop the run and see if Bennett can beat him in the air. I don't think that can happen. And that's where Florida's going to have the advantage. It's just kind of that fade the quarterback type defense. So I like the Gators, and I gave it out at 4.5, and it's at 3.5, but I still like it at 3.5. I actually like them to win. So no matter what, I'm going to take the Gators to win for a couple stars, and definitely a little sprinkle on that money line. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, Florida had my only concern with Florida not winning this game would be, they held a lead against A&M, and A&M, just punched them out, and they couldn't hold the lead. So, should Georgia put together the kind of game where they're chewing it up and they're actually getting the run going, Florida might be up for a challenge, but. Again, if I'm playing this game, I'm leaning Florida. The line's coming down. That tells me all I really need to know. I know a lot of money's coming in Florida, both from the pros and the Joes, and so that's where I would go if I was going to bet this game.
All right, my man, that's good news. Let's get into the final game here, the biggest game of the weekend. We have Clemson versus Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is about a 6-point dog, and the total of this is about a 52. Funny, all these big games are total around 52, 53, kind of like Vegas is like, is it going to be defense? Is it going to be offense? I think it's a good number for Vegas to put there,
I agree.
Yeah, cool. It's hard to cap this game without Trevor Lawrence. You got to throw out the statistics, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what their yards per play is when you take out Trevor Lawrence. It doesn't matter what their completion percentage is. It doesn't matter what their yards per pass is. Some of their explosive plays that you might look at. What matters is really what Trevor is valued to the line. And I have Trevor as at about a 6.5 point difference with Clemson. And I might be a little low. It might be 7. But Notre Dame, they blow out the teams they're supposed to, but I've also seen them struggle against some bad defenses like Duke and Louisville, or Louisville. I not a good showing last week against Georgia Tech
not at all.
Clemson whooped them by 70. And maybe they're looking ahead to this game. I don't know, but the downgrade in my power ratings makes this as Clemson -2.5, which would warrant a play on Notre Dame. But it scares me that Ian Book has choked in these games before. This situation, he's just, for some reason, they haven't gotten over the hump, and maybe that's part of Kelly, their coach, but you got to give the coaching advantage to Clemson for sure. Clemson's D did hold tight also against Boston College. They kept Boston College scoreless the second half of last game. So I'm thinking they're going to come out a lot more careful this first half. Maybe a first half under is warranted here because of that. Just kind of brain spitballing as we talk.
Sure.
Trevor Lawrence. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, does Brian Kelly, I mean, you're right. He doesn't show up in big games, any big games. I don't recall any big game that he's won where it was consequential. And this is, listen, there's no Trevor Lawrence. This is a consequential game for Brian Kelly, is it not?
Oh, I think so. Notre Dame fans expect the most, and Kelly has gotten them to the playoffs one or two times, but they always seem to fizzle out in the big game. So
they're ranked number 4 right now. So
yeah,
I mean, you'd expect if they don't win this game, I would think Notre Dame brass would kind of just. It's like Harbaugh at Michigan, right? Like he's got to go. So that's my thought, but. You got Brian Kelly. He can't win a big game. If you can't win without Trevor Lawrence in there, Clemson's continuity is not set up properly right now. They're still discombobulated because of Trevor Lawrence. They may play a little smoother this week, but you got your second string quarterback in there. You don't have the Heisman Trophy candidate in there, and so if Brian Kelly can't pull a victory out of this particular game, I think you have to look and say, what do we expect out of him in the future? That's my thought.
I agree. And, maybe they throw some blitzes at the new quarterback, DJ. He's a freshman. And, make him throw it downfield, kind of like my other handicap that I talked about, Georgia. Maybe that's the way to do it. Stop their read option. They got a huge chunk play, a touchdown against Boston College on a simple read option play where the defensive end choked and went for the running back. ETN, that's where the game needs to be won for Clemson, but Notre Dame can stop the run, only averaging opponents 3.24 rushing yards per attempt, which is top 15 in the nation. But Notre Dame hasn't played anyone. What's that 3.24 when they haven't played anyone? You're right. It's very silly that a number 4 ranked team has a big enough discrepancy that there's still a 6-point dog at home to a team that's like ranked 2 or 3 spots ahead of them without their quarterback. It's just,
yes.
It shows you the top 3 teams, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, is kind of light years above the rest, but at least 7-8 points, but with Lawrence. But, man, that's all I have, bud. I don't have a play, man.
I don't have a play either, but this would be a spot if I was a gambling man on this particular thing, and, I had a choppy week last week, so I'm not looking to just throw out darts, but I'd lean Notre Dame plus the points here just because, hey, this is their only shot to really make some noise this year, I think. So if they can beat Clemson without Lawrence – let's put it this way. They need to beat Clemson without Lawrence if they want to make some noise. So that's what it is.
Exactly. My power ratings say that the lean is that too. I personally don't have an opinion on that, but I will lean the first half under for now. And I'm going to see if this gets bet up a little bit. I'll take a look at that. You're thinking 52 total. You're probably looking at a first half around 20. If there's any chance that thing goes to 21 because the total goes up to like 54 or 55 or something, then I would probably have to make a play. I doubt you'll see 21.5. Maybe you buy the half point if you want, but I don't know. That would be my lean. So let's just leave it at that.
Sure.
Any other games you want to throw out there?
No, I like Oklahoma State. They're playing, Oklahoma State's going into Kansas State this week, and they're favored by 12.5. I'm looking strong at Oklahoma State minus the points. I think they come back after that loss to Texas. I think they steamroll this Kansas State team. I think they got a shot at it anyway. I haven't made a play yet, but I'm looking at that one really hard. So it's an interesting matchup, I think. And I think Oklahoma State's a pretty good team. They just, they dropped it at the end after leading most of the game. But I am looking at them this week.
Oh, it's not a bad idea. And money did come in on the under. I wonder what that Kansas State team total is. Because Oklahoma State's defense is actually a lot better. They massively outgained Texas last week and still found a way to lose that game. So, really interesting on that one. I'll be looking at that one too. No, like what your thoughts thoughts
interesting.
are. Well,
thank you.
Let's move into a little NFL then. And unfortunately, Brian, I wrote down Green Bay versus San Francisco. And now San Francisco has a COVID positive test, and they believe it's Kendrick Bourne. The last Adam Schefter tweet I saw was Kendrick Bourne. I guess we'll just quick breeze over it. I have San Francisco +6. The total on this is 50. I don't know if this game's going to happen now. The spread was a lot different before San Francisco's injuries to their quarterback, Garoppolo, their best pass catcher in Kittle. Coleman came back and got hurt again. I'm not sure that Nick Mullins is that much of a downgrade from Jimmy G, but the rest of the injuries really deplete this team. The Packers have some weird woes as well. They have some COVID issues with their running back. We're not sure if Aaron Jones is going to play and stuff like that. My power ratings, even with the injuries, have Green Bay a slight favorite, not a 6-point favorite. But this is a revenge game for Green Bay because they were massively embarrassed last year in the playoffs when they gave up like 28, 30 some points, whatever it was, to San Francisco, and the game was over at halftime. And
Right.
And they also lost another one. It's their weak spot. And Kyle Shanahan knows that Green Bay can't stop a good rushing creative offense. Not the Bears rushing offense, but like a good rushing offense. So Jermichael Hasty, he's playing for the Niners, and he's probably going to be a good fantasy back this weekend, and maybe Jerick McKinnon here. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers do blow this team out, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners, play tough and win. You saw Mick Mullins win a couple games there, and then they had that horrible game against Miami. So I'm gonna lay off this game. Any quick thoughts on it?
Yeah, real quick. I'm not going to play the game, but here are my quick thoughts. Green Bay was lethargic at home against a motivated Vikings team coming out of a bye. Now they got to go hit the road after playing, fairly sloppy at home with very little enthusiasm. You got to go play the 49ers now. So the revenge angle, sure, it is there, but then Tom Brady should have the revenge angle on the Giants for taking those Super Bowls. You thought he would have blew them out, but I think that the Niners have confidence at home versus Green Bay because of last year. And you're right about the quarterback switch. I don't know that it's a huge drop-off. I think the 49ers have enough to stay inside the number. So that's my lean, but I'm not going to make a play on it. But that's just my thoughts on the game.
No, good thoughts there. And I agree, totally not making a play. We'll see if this game even happens or if it gets rescheduled. So quick thoughts on that one. Detroit versus Minnesota. Minnesota 3.5-point favorite. Kind of been bouncing between 4 and 3.5. The total is at 52.5. Any thoughts on this game, Brian?
Yeah, you got Minnesota coming home after a good victory at Green Bay. Solid all around. Can they string 2 victories together? That's a question. They've come home before after a loss and blown it up, couldn't do anything. But then you had Detroit after a real shaky victory at Atlanta. Atlanta basically gave them the game. They came home and then they got crushed by the Colts. So you're looking at 2 teams who have fragile confidence. I'm looking at Minnesota. I'm leaning Minnesota to win this game. I don't know that they're going to – you might land on 3. So I'd be scared to lay 4 with a team that hasn't put two good games together this year. So that's where I'm at with that. It's looking like a tease game that I might connect with something else, on Sunday. So right now it's a no play with the potential to be teased.
All right. No, like what you're saying there. I actually like the Lions here with the hook. I think I gave it out at 4. Can't remember, but it's the Lions beat themselves last week against the Colts. The couple turnovers, they're actually pretty close in total yards. There's only like a 30 to 40 yard discrepancy. The Lions have been a sieve at defense, especially against the pass, but their secondary has been so injured, and now they're getting most of them back. And I think, I'm not sure yet, but I think Desmond Trufant, their stud corner, should be able to play this week. Lions pretty good on the road, 3-1 against the spread on the road, but 3-1 straight up on the road. That includes the games against the Falcons and the Cardinals. Very good teams. So for some reason, the Lions are road warriors. The Vikings kind of could let down a little. It's they just beat their rival Packers, and I'll tell you right now, if the Packers had a fifth quarter in that game, they might have came back and won that one. You saw them score and get that 2-point conversion. The Vikings defense is bad, and here's what I hate about bad defenses is the backdoor cover. I could see the Vikings being up by 10 points, 11 points. The Lions come down and go for 2 and a touchdown, get it to 3 so they can possibly win, run the clock out, and they lose by 3 points. That's why I like the hook on this one, is because of the Vikings defense. So I'm going to make that a play at 2 stars here, a premium play, a little sprinkle on the money line too.
Nice. What do you think about that total though? Since you said their cornerbacks are coming back, I didn't look that deep into it. I usually look at trending numbers and seeing how offenses are efficient, whether to go over or under. What do you think about the total in that game? Anything?
So my first inclination on the total was over, but I've seen these teams just become completely incompetent is what I'm trying to say. But, you almost think that maybe Minnesota is going to be like, oh, we just ran the ball against Green Bay. That's all we need to do is run the ball. And we did hit that under 52. It was close, under 52.5 against for the Packers versus the Vikings, but it was a windy day, and that's part of the reason why we took it. But you wonder if Minnesota is just going to do that, and Detroit might try to stop them. That's my only scare. But I would still lean over, even though Detroit gets a couple guys back, because Minnesota's defense is choppy, and I think it could. This day and age NFL, that's not that high of a total. It's just a little bit high.
Yeah, right now it is not. I agree.
Cool, man. Cool. All right, let's move on to another game, Seattle versus the Buffalo Bills. This is a pretty cool game because both of these teams are vying playoff teams. Big game, in my opinion. You have a higher total here, Brian. 55.5, man. Pretty big total, but this thing's not hitting 3. You got 2.5, a little juice on Seattle. I've seen -120, -117. No one wants to grab Buffalo at 2.5 right now. They're sitting it out, right? So I don't know, man. The only thing I have to say here is on my power ratings, I have this as a pick. I'm giving Buffalo a couple points for home field advantage, but they haven't looked good the last couple weeks. They didn't cover against the Jets. If Cam Newton didn't fumble that ball, they could have lost that game. That was in the red zone, I believe, when that happened. So the Patriots were either getting a field goal or a touchdown to win that game. Cam just fumbled it. It was bad. And that's a depleted Patriots team that happened to. But so Buffalo's in a lull, and I can't explain it. Maybe their quarterback, Josh Allen, came down to earth. But one thing I will say is Seattle's great at stopping the run, but for some reason they let quarterback runners run all over him. Kyler Murray put up 67 yards against Seattle that last game. And Josh Allen, he's very capable at running the ball. That's my thing right there. That's probably the key to the game is Josh Allen's legs. Seattle's D is amazing against the run, but if Josh Allen can actually complete some passes like he did the first 3 games with Brown back now, Diggs, some of those guys, then they could win this game. And it's a bad spot for Seattle because they're sandwiched right now. They played San Francisco, and then they go to the Rams next week. So this is kind of a sandwich spot, travel spot. I put no leaner play on this. I suppose gun to the head, I would have to go with Buffalo and the dog. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, listen, this is a great game, maybe the best game of the weekend right here. I think you're gonna see a lot of offense, and I think Buffalo turned a corner. Yeah, Cam was driving, but he didn't score. Buffalo came through, But Buffalo was moving up and down on New England like they weren't even on the field at times during that game. Just ridiculous. So I look for Buffalo to win the game outright. I look for Seattle to drop their second game of the season. It is a bad spot for Seattle because they played, division rival Niners, and they won the game fairly easily. But, did they expend too much energy? Now they got to go to the East Coast, and then they're going to come back. Obviously, the Rams are on their mind because they want to sew up that division after they lost to the Cardinals the previous week. So I just think Buffalo's in a great spot here. They're not leaving home. They've been at home. This is their second week at home. They're comfortable. They got the win. They feel better about themselves now. They stabilized their team, and I just think it's a momentum play where the Bills are in the right spot at the right time. Seattle can score, yes, but Seattle gives up a ton, and I think Josh Allen's going to expose them. And just like you said, John Brown's back, and I think they're going to score. I think there are going to be a lot of offense. Will it go over 55? I don't have it projected to going over 55, but I'm not going to play the total in this game because that scares me. I get totals wrong more often than right, to be honest. Only if I really see it do I really play it. But I do see the Bills winning this game outright. I'll definitely take the 2.5.
All right, man. And maybe the public jumps all over Seattle on Sunday because of what they saw against San Fran and what they've been seeing with Buffalo lately.
Yes.
And you get a 3. That you might get an even 3 there. So possible good weight on that. You know what's funny about San Fran and Seattle? San Fran has a great style of football in general with that power in your face, punch you in the mouth football, but it has a small shelf life. Maybe San Fran's team from last year beat Seattle last week, but Seattle's the finesse team that doesn't get as injured. They're good at stuffing the run. They don't stuff the pass, but Russell Wilson gets himself out of trouble. They don't overly run the ball. They're passing it more, and they're not getting injured. Well, the shelf life on San Fran's team, if you look at the IR, they're not even a shell of the team they were last year. So that's just some interesting thoughts about their style of football. It doesn't last.
Agree with you on that. I mean, look, Russell Wilson is Houdini. So when you have Houdini in the backfield that can throw a bomb the way he does with the kind of touch he has on that ball, make the proper decisions most of the time, play an MVP caliber season, you're right. You're going to be on the right side of the W more times than not,
Yeah, especially if you're healthy. So for sure. That was just a couple quick 2 cents on that. Well, let's move into the last game I have, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders versus the LA Chargers, -1 total on this game at 53.5. Any thoughts on this one?
My thought is this. Chargers blew that game against the Broncos, and they come home. Do they pull a Minnesota Viking, right, where the Vikings had a game and they lost, and they come home and they get blown out the next week? It's possible. There's a psychological angle here that I don't know that I can quantify it with numbers right now. That plus the Raiders, they're on the road. I mean, they hit the road last week against Cleveland, and I just don't who knows? I honestly don't know. I can't get a gauge on this, and with these two teams that play well one week and then crappy the next, I don't know that I can put a bet in there.
All right, man. No, and it's funny. I wrote down some similar stuff here. Vegas off a nice road win against Cleveland, but the Browns just kind of looked like crap coaching wise that game, and it was a extremely windy day, and Cleveland didn't do the right thing and just pound the ball correctly, and the Raiders did. I think they had way more running plays than Cleveland, and Cleveland's defense tired in the fourth. But I've seen good Raiders versus the Saints and the Patriots where they I seen them against the Saints, and they also Kansas City, that's where it was.
Chiefs, yes.
Yeah, they beat them outright. And then I've seen the bad against the Patriots and Buffalo, where they got their butts kicked. So which one's going to show up? The Chargers are better than 2-5. I think a lot of people would agree with me there, but they just keep choking games away. They're almost used to it by now. The Raiders have a coaching advantage with Gruden, in my opinion. Lynn's doesn't blow me away, but if this is the spot to ever get something going, it's got to be for the Chargers, man. I wrote down lean Chargers, but I don't have a play on it right now either.
Let me give you a couple of thoughts here. First of all, I love John Gruden because the dude's mind has got just so much information. He remembers so much. He's creative. So the team, you see these victories the Raiders are getting. His team is moving in the right direction. Can they pull it together 2 weeks in a row? After a hard-nosed, hold-on win last week against the Browns. You're right. I don't know if they can. But the Chargers, at some point, losing games the way they lose them, that takes a toll on your team. It just does. Yeah. So. But yeah, it's a game where it's nutty. I'll watch it. I'll hope that the Raiders win just because I'm a Gruden fan. I probably won't. I can't justify a play on either side of this game. I really can't.
All right, my man. Well, that's great because we hit some key games here. Is there any other NFL games that you want to quick throw out?
I'm looking at the Texans-Jags, and I think the Texans, Minshew's not starting. Did they bench him, or did he get hurt? Do you know?
He hurt his thumb from what I heard last.
Is that legit, or just a reason to bench him?
Seems fishy to me, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I look for Deshaun Watson to go light it up in Jacksonville. I think the Texans will get a win here, and I'm looking at making a play on the Texans. I think it's -6.5. I just think after 2 weeks off, regrouping, I think Deshaun Watson's going to come out firing. And I just don't think, without Minshew at least throwing the ball around, the Jags can't hang in there. That's my thought there.
Well, there you go. And they don't have that coach keeping them down over there no more in Houston. And they've been playing a little bit better since he's been fired. So interesting there. I'll look for that 6.5. That's an interesting play. The Jags don't even have a starting quarterback there, so they're pretty incompetent. So yeah, kind of liking your thoughts there. There's a couple big favorites that are tempting. There's the Steelers against the Cowboys is tempting. It's a massive spread. There's another one out there. I can't remember what it is, but it's interesting thoughts there. It's probably the Jets. Whoever the Jets are playing is probably a massive spread.
I think was it Kansas City favored over Carolina, 12.5, whatever.
Yes, that's another huge.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh God, I for some reason Bridgewater is like 16-4 as a road dog or something. There's some stats I did tweet it out a couple weeks back when we were on the Chargers +7.5 against somebody. It was the Saints. That's it. For some reason, Bridgewater's just a great dog. And Christian McCaffrey's coming back, so I wonder if that kind of fires him up a little bit. The Chiefs don't need to blow him out. I don't know. I would lean I would lean Carolina, but I'm not.
I would too in that. And, I had Carolina against the Saints 2 weeks ago. They were getting 6.5. They lose by 3 with that to try the long field goal kick. But then last week, they're favored against the Falcons. I had the Falcons in that one. And so I'm with you on this, and I can appreciate that. But you're right. Carolina might be a play in that game. The Steelers, I mean, who's Dallas ushering out at QB? I heard the guy who started last week isn't starting this week.
Exactly. He's DiNucci. He's benched, and this Cooper guy might come in and foul in that situation. I don't know if Dalton's got COVID now, so he can't play. So yeah, it's the Cowboys are an absolute mess. But you got to wonder if they get lucky one of these quarterbacks that can actually complete to those all-pro receivers type guys. I don't know. I think Gallup's out, but they still have CeeDee Lamb. Patel's such a mess. It's a massive spread, and the Steelers are in a letdown spot after beating the Ravens straight up and being outgained. So it could be one of those. Dallas has nothing to lose, and they keep it closer than 13. I don't know. So that worries me a little bit, man.
You go from a 4-point dog to a 13-point favorite. That's a 17-point swing. That's a lot to carry.
Yeah, the look ahead was something like that a long time ago. That's right. That was freaking just massive, man. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate your insights. Had a blast talking to you. Where could our listeners find some of your great information?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure coming back on here. You really know your stuff. You do a lot of detailed stuff with statistics. I can appreciate that. I'm a little less detailed in that sense. However, you guys can check me out on Twitter. My_bankroll on Twitter. That's where I do most of my stuff now. We have Legit Betting Edge podcast. That's a YouTube channel, and we do 3 podcasts a week, myself and my partner, Scott Johnson. So we're just getting that cranked up. We're on episode 9. We're going to shoot that a little later today. Going to talk about every NFL game going on this week, and we'll put out segments. And so we're just building slowly. But most of the time, you just find me at Twitter. That's where my primary stuff is right now, and then we'll just kind of segue out from that. But I appreciate you asking, Keith.
Make sure you guys check out Brian. He has great information every single week. You can follow him on Twitter, once again, at my_bankroll. All right, my friends, now it's time for some free NFL plays. And I have an extra one over the Detroit play. New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay laying 5.5 points. The total on this is 51.5. I mean, look at the total going down. The weather looks pretty bad, obviously. Rain is in the forecast, up to 22-mile-per-hour winds. Does that say anything about this game? Well, I'll tell you one thing. These teams, what they don't do very well is they don't run the ball. They're average, maybe average at that. The Saints are a little bit better than the Tampa Bay Bucks at running the ball, and they're going to need a running game. It's going to be hard to get the ball in the air because of A, the weather, as I just went over, and B, these teams already played each other and know what to look for. It's kind of that second game where the defenses have seen the offenses before. They've seen their kind of tricks. They've seen their formations and what plays can come off of those formations. The biggest part of this handicap is how both of these defend the run. Tampa ranks number 1 against the run, as I've said before in other podcasts, and New Orleans ranks number 3 against the run. That's huge. Both teams will be stuck here if the weather stays bad. Then these teams are stuck relying on the run. They have to. Okay, that says go under. The clock's going to be running because of it. This total's way too high for this game. We're going to take under 51.5 points, and that is a 2-star premium shared play. Finally, we are going to get into our refuse to lose teaser. And our refuse to lose teasers are now 5-3. We won the last couple weeks here. We're going to tease the Saints game that I just went over from plus 5.5, the Saints themselves, to plus 11.5. Okay, you're going past the 6, you're going past the 7, and you're going past the 10. 3 key numbers there. And we're going to go to a game we already covered with the Bills. As Brian mentioned before, the Bills are teaser candidates. Tease them to plus 8.5. Seattle can be obviously caught up on. We saw the Cardinals catch them and win the game outright. So backdoor is always open with bad pass defenses and decent weather. It's looking okay in Buffalo. Could always change. Keep your eye on that. But I still like the Bills at plus 8.5 for the teaser. 2-star premium shared play.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountains?
All right, now it's time for our bow to the gambling gods. Parlay hasn't been great lately. I think we're only 1-5 on these. At least the one we hit was a decent 2.75 to 1, but we're a little down, so we're going to have to fix that. Fresno State, we're going to take them minus 404 against a terrible UNLV team. We're going to take Georgia State minus 1,050 against one of the worst teams in college football, Louisiana Monroe. They're favored by 18.5 points. Big bounce back spot for Georgia State after the embarrassment against Coastal. We're going to take Iowa State minus 550 against a decimated Baylor Bears team. We're going to take Memphis minus 1,000 against a bad South Florida team. Memphis in a huge bounce back spot after that Cincinnati game, and Charlotte in a bounce back spot too, minus only 188 against Middle Tennessee State. And Middle Tennessee State's a pretty bad team. As you know, Charlotte should be able to handle them at Middle Tennessee State. NFL is going to be Houston Texans at minus 330 against the Jaguars. The Jaguars are quarterbackless, and the Texans, Deshaun Watson, for his own integrity, with J.J. Watt there, need to win this game. Cooks should be back off injury. David Johnson looks fine. I like the Texans here to definitely win this game. This one pays about 2.5 to 1. So best luck to you on that one. And now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.eu for a 50% sign-up bonus. Please visit uwager and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. All right, Sharp College as of Wednesday afternoon. And remember, I'm being more selective with this now. It's going to be more about the quality of the line movements, any syndicates or sharp hits, rather than the quantity of just the money discrepancy. So we're going to start right with the Wyoming Cowboys, -3 to -3.5, hosting Colorado State. 50% of the tickets on the Cowboys and 90% of the money. Sharp money on Louisiana, -13 to -14, hosting Arkansas State. 53% of the tickets on Louisiana Lafayette and 94% of the money. Sharp money on Georgia State, -17 to -17.5, hosting Louisiana Monroe. 35% of the tickets on Georgia State and 62% of the money. A pretty big get-up spot for them. Sharp money on Memphis, -17 to -18 at South Florida. 53% of the tickets on Memphis, 80 and 93% of the money. Sharp money on Boston College, -13 to -14 at Syracuse. 45% of the tickets and 68% of the money's on Boston College. Sharp money on Minnesota, -7 to -7.5 versus Illinois. Dual action, 74% of the tickets on Minnesota and 94% of the money. You know, Illinois has got all that COVID situation going on there with their quarterbacks and some of the rest of the team. Sharp money on Oregon State, +3 all the way swinging to -1.5, hosting Washington State's dual action, 66% of the tickets on Oregon State and 75% of the money. Sharp totals, Wyoming versus Colorado State, over 51 to 52.5, 50% of the money on Wyoming and 92% of the money. Sharp money on Air Force versus Army, under 43, down to 41, 51% of the tickets on Air Force, the under, and 91% of the money. That is a low total. Sharp money on Arkansas State versus Louisiana, over 63, 62% of the tickets on the over, but 92% of the money. Louisiana has a pretty good run game. I think this game could go under. Sharp money on Tulsa versus Navy, over 54 to 57. Dual action, 75% of the tickets on the over, 94% of the money. Sharp money on Nebraska versus Northwestern, over 53 to 55. 49% of the tickets on the over, 94% of the money. Sharp money on Michigan State versus Iowa, under 48.5 to 46.5. 50% of the tickets on the under and 95% of the money. I kind of agree there. Sharp money on Charlotte versus Middle Tennessee State, over 61.5 to 65.5. 55% of the tickets are on the over and 93% of the money. Sharp money on UTSA versus Rice, under 49.5 down to 46.5. 39% of the tickets on the under, but 99% of the money is on the under. Sharp money on Western Kentucky versus FAU, under 42 to 39.5. That's a real low one. Dual action, 83% of the tickets are on the under, and 6% of the money is on that under. Well, these guys can't score or anything. Sharp money on Iowa State versus Baylor, under 54.5 to 47.5. 50% of the tickets on the under, 91% of the money. Sharp money on Washington State versus Oregon State, over 60.5 to 65.5. 40% of the tickets are on the over and 81% of the money. Sharp money on Washington versus Cal, under 48.5 all the way down to 43.5. 53% of the tickets are on the under and 90% of the money. Sharp NFL Week 9. As of Wednesday afternoon, sharp money on the New York Giants, +3.5 to +2.5 at Washington. 56% of the tickets are on the Giants and 88% of the money. Little road revenge spot there. Sharp money on the Las Vegas Raiders, +3 down to +1. 61% on the Raiders and 88% of the money on the Raiders. Sharp money on the Saints, +5.5 at Tampa Bay. 52% of the tickets are on the Saints and 79% of the money. Sharp totals, sharp Green Bay versus San Fran, under 51 down to 48.5. 51% of the tickets are on the under, 72% of the money. Hope that game plays on Thursday. Sharp money on Carolina versus Kansas City, over 50.5 to 52.5. 57% of the tickets are on the over, and 96% of the money. Sharp money on Denver versus Atlanta, over 47 to 50. 66% of the tickets are on the over, and 96% of the money. We've got a dome in Atlanta. Sharp money on New Orleans versus Tampa Bay, under 54 down to 51.5. As you know, we like that one. 41% of the tickets are on the under, and 94% of the money. Sharp money on New England versus the New York Jets, over 41.5 to 42.5. 50% of the tickets are on the over, and 86% of the money. So I agree there, because New England's defense has been decimated and the Jets' D is horrible. So there should be some points either way, right? And possibly even some turnover touchdowns. So that's all we have for podcast 65. Hope you guys are having a great week, or doing the best you can with it. And maybe this weekend we can think about some football and nothing else. Everybody, if you have any questions for the Odds Breakers, feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Have a blast and go get some winners.